And now, Grantland Pop Culture.
So we're here with Bill Murray, in case you haven't noticed yet. We're here mostly to promote his movie, St. Vincent, which is now out. But we have some news of the day before we get into that. What's going on with Ghostbusters?
The news of the day?
News of the day. I get a call from my wife this morning, and she says, gee, Al Roker's talking about the reunion of the Ghostbusters cast.
Al Roker is always talking about the Ghostbusters. He has a thing about the Ghostbusters. I think he had like chicken pox or something when he was a kid, and he was forced to sit home and watch Ghostbusters while he healed from chicken pox or something like that. He knows every line of the movie, and he's really a big fan of it, and so he'd like to see more and more of it. So
there was some kind of a Entertainment Weekly shoot yesterday, or?
No, it happened a little while ago at the Toronto Film Festival, actually. It was they brought out the movie for a couple of weeks in the summer. They re-released Ghostbusters. I don't know if they cleaned it up or dusted it off or enhanced it or something, but they showed it for a few weeks. I guess it actually made money for a few weeks. It wasn't surprising. And then they have a re-release. They're selling a 30-year DVD or something like that.
So what, in your lifetime, Ghostbusters was the first big breakout after Saturday Night Live. What did Ghostbusters do to your perception of Hollywood and the movies after your experience there?
Well, it was a process of months of making it, and then the release of it. So it was about a year of strong impressions, very strong impressions of the people you worked with, and the experience of going into a studio and really being like bad boys, kind of like, almost like troublemakers. And because we knew we had the goods, Danny had a good one, and we were going to ride it and have fun doing it. And all those impressions were great, and the movie it's still one of the biggest movies ever made. I mean, in 1984 dollars, it's a gigantic.
Well, what impressions remain with you that you've taken forward from that in your work?
Well, they were important then because that was the beginning of when movie studios began to be run by people that weren't movie people. I think at the time Coca-Cola had just bought the studio, bought Columbia. Columbia was the studio that made it, and so all of a sudden there were like retail soft drink guys coming around going like, I don't really think so. And we had a lot of fun with those boys. And so it was, you
knew how to take advantage of a situation.
We did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just remember all those guys coming around. I remember because when you work in the movies, you feel when someone comes on the set that's not one of you. It's almost animal. It really is. You can kind of almost smell them, and you would just go, "There's someone here." It's really like an episode of Star Trek, because you're like, "There's an alien here. There's someone that's not one of us." And I just remember we all kind of went, giving that look like, "There's someone here. They're out there," looking at each other, going, "There's a creepiness," and there they were. There were like 6 suits that walked in. People overuse the word suits, but it couldn't be more inappropriate on a movie set, like 6 suits walking onto a Ghostbusters set. So they came out there, and they're just a bunch of bean counter cruncher guys, and they kind of were like, we own all of this and all of you, that kind of vibe. So it was delightful, and I just was so overjoyed, because I thought, oh, this is going to be so much fun. And we just started talking to him, and just kibitzing and shooting the breeze and stopping, and stopped everything, stopped all the shooting and everything. And after about 25 minutes, they kind of went, no one's worked for 25 minutes or so. And we just launched into the next set of stories and leaned back and get some coffee for these guys. Then it was like 45 minutes. And they're watching, and there's 150 people that haven't worked for as long as they've been on the set. And you see their minds going, oh, God, You know, this is the money, and we refused to let them leave. Just refusing. No, funny thing happened. You know, just this kind of thing, just grabbing them by the wrist and pulling them away. And they never came back again. They never came back again. They beat it out of there. When they finally got up and left, they realized they thought in their heads they'd probably cost us, you know, $95,000 just by walking on the set.
So they were looking at the budgets every day to see that you weren't taking time off.
I don't know if they were looking at the budgets, but they know that they're not. When you see 150 people just staring at you, going, "Are you enjoying yourself?" You know, they got a little uncomfortable.
So let's get to St. Vincent, which is a delightful movie. And you were remarking right before we came in here that somehow the sum is greater than the parts, but the parts are all so individually perfect for the movie. Explain that.
Well, the script is good. The casting is very good. You know, it's a first-time director. You wouldn't expect it to be as sort of as successful as it is. But somehow it all those people together, all the actors did a fantastic job. They really did. Everyone was really good.
But when you sit back and you think about it, and this is not a spoiler alert by any means, but you have prostitution, you have the religious, you have divorce, you have a stripper, you have a nursing home,
Alzheimer's,
you have goons, you have all these things together, and it all seems to work.
Yeah, it's a real meatloaf of a film, as Brian McConaughey would say. That's a real meatloaf of a movie. But it has everything, and it almost seems like it's too much, but the dynamics are, you know, they're in you know, harmonious opposition to each other. And it's really much more realistic, much more lifelike than most films are. That's what when I look at it and try to analyze it. People have different dynamics. I mean, the dynamics of your life are all very different. Anyone's life are all very different. But you don't see them together in a piece. You don't see them all together. They're not like looked at all together like they are in this film.
Well, one thing that struck me about you and the nature of your ability to go from comedy to drama to meaningfulness and humor is at one point in the movie, you're collecting your wife in a box, and you say she shrunk, and there's a smile on people's faces, and there's a comment of people feeling sorry, and then you come in with, well, why didn't you ask me what was she like? What are you going to do now? And that beautiful turn from the comedic smile to the very serious part of grieving hit me just like, boy, Bill just really turned that.
Yeah, that's good writing. That's good writing. And it was fun to play that moment. You know, it was fun to play that moment. And it's a grace note. It's a beautiful touch in the film.
How much did you have to do? You know, I'm sitting there, and I went to see the movie twice just because I've known you for so long, and I'm thinking, well, you know what? That's a Bill Murray line. You know, when Melissa McCarthy's going through the divorce and said, "There goes my job security." That had to be you.
I don't think that was. I mean, I may have tweaked it a little bit, but I think that was in the script. I mean, I can't remember anymore. Ideally, you don't remember. I think whatever you came up with, but I got to give credit to the writer-director, Ted Melfi. He put it there. You know, I mean, I sort of improve things. You know, that's what you're supposed to do. You know, I was trained to do that at the Second City, and you sort of improve things. That's what actors are supposed to do. You go to work, and if you make every scene better, then you had a good day's work. You know, so well, I won't take a whole heck of a lot of credit for, but I worked hard, and you know, I just do my regular sort of craftsman job.
So what in your career, what pieces of work, whether it's skits for Saturday Night Live or movies or your brief spate in the theater, what works would you say you've had the most input in terms of your writing ability, and your creation?
There's some that I really like, and sometimes. Well, I love being in Sophia's movie. I got to do one scene in Sophia's movie where I created some. Sophia wrote the Sofia Coppola wrote the screenplay, and it's a very nice, beautiful piece, Lost in Translation.
Yeah, beautiful.
But there was one scene where I spoke as a man who had children, and Sofia couldn't write that. She didn't have children at that time. And that was something that was a sort of a missing piece to it. But the script was there to, that was the only thing that, I really brought to that, was that one little piece. And I was pleased to do that because it made a moment that only like a sort of a married guy or someone with kids could make in the film. And it sort of made sense in relation to Scarlett Johansson's character, and tried to explain like what her future might be.
So fatherhood has an influence on your work.
Everything does. When you have to work with emotion, it's very easy to sort of remember the emotions that you come to with your family, whether it's your own children, your own parents, your own brothers and sisters. That's sort of the most informative stuff. The strongest impressions come from out there, and the strongest feelings usually come from the outside. So, those are the ones you witness firsthand.
How do you account? I mean, it's amazing to me. You are the single character, and we've known each other now for 39 years. You transcend demographics. You transcend generations. I went to see St. Vincent the second time, and the people in the audience, and I noticed that half of them were over 60, and a good portion of them were under 30. What accounts for that?
I think it's Space Jam, John. I think that was my big. Just like Bill Cosby had Jell-O, I had Space Jam. I think that was sort of what got me to like the next generation.
And you've stayed there.
Well, we won in Space Jam. We beat the aliens. It's a championship team, so people remember where they were when Michael Jordan and the cartoon characters beat the aliens from outer space. Everyone remembers where they were.
And how did Space Jam affect your relationship with Michael Jordan?
Well, I thought I did him a good service on that one. I was helpful. I was sort of in charge of some aspect of the live action shooting, and I contributed. There's some writing that I did there that was, didn't exist on the page. And, it was Larry Bird and Michael and I playing golf. That was really a lot of fun. We got to play golf between shots of the movie. So
sports has been a lifeblood, a part of your life, and it's been part of our friendship and relationship through the years. How do you look at sports today?
Well, you have to sort of look at it through the looking glass of ESPN, I guess. I mean, that's how most people see their sports in America anyway. They see it through your network. That's how it's mostly promoted, although I really do like watching the Comcast from Chicago. I have the satellite, so I get to watch Chicago sports on Comcast. WGN doesn't do as much as it once did. It's now sort of a rerun network, but they do some Cub games. But to get to follow all my hometown teams, the first thing in the morning on channel 665 is a hoot for me, and to watch the post game on in the Bears locker room is silly. It's like, we can sit there and it's sort of like talking after the game. The conversation goes on like that.
So what's your relationship with the Cubs now? You got Madden, you got your manager. Are you talking with Theo about free agency?
I was kind of looking for a job as a groundskeeper there. He's offered me like a temporary position as a trainee, intern kind of thing. I was like, yeah, I know what that means. They're going to be fun. They were really fun to watch at the end of last season. They gave a lot of playoff teams a real handful in the last month of the season, and the talent is startling.
So you're following the Addison Russells and Sterling Cash, all the people that are there. You're still on top of your game in terms of.
Well, I don't know if I'm on top of my game. I'm not as good as I once was, like when I was 8. But
who is?
Yeah. Oh. But that would really be transcending generations if I could really have all the stats. But I don't want to be a stat guy, and that's the problem. if you go to another country and you're watching a sporting event over there and you don't really understand the game, like watching, say, cricket. I don't really know what the hell's going on in cricket. And they start talking about cricket and they throw all these numbers and these stats at you, and you have no idea what it means. And I always think of that when I watch, ESPN, when they start throwing all these stats at you, which really don't mean anything. They don't really mean anything. There's the score, you win or you lose. That's really the bottom line of it. But if you were a person from another country trying to watch football or basketball or baseball, and they're just throwing all these stats at you, you go like, should I know this? Does this matter? Will this be on the final? And it's just a lot of, it's just filling time. It's a little bit gibberish. So when I look at the sports, I try to think of the people that have authentic voices, that have really good voices, that can make a game exciting just by the watching of the game. And I'm reminded of Chris Myers, who was a guy that you brought to ESPN, right. I believe. And he called a baseball game last year that I saw, and it was on like the alternative Fox game of the week or something like that, or the main one had gotten rained out or something. So Chris had the national game. I think Chris Myers is the best baseball announcer there is. I love hearing him call a baseball game, but Fox doesn't give him any work. They make him do NASCAR, I don't know what the hell. I feel so badly for him. It's like, I know, Chris, they're going around in the one direction and everything, but.
So besides hiring Chris Myers back and besides doing less statistics, what else should ESPN be doing to make you a better sports fan?
A better sports fan?
Or a sports fan that you would like to watch more?
Well, who was the guy, Marty? Was it Marty Glickman? Was that his name?
Oh, yeah. Way back when, yeah. New York Knicks.
Well, those kinds of ideas, like the game, didn't he do the game without an announcer once upon a time?
Oh, Don Ohlmeyer did that.
Don Ohlmeyer did that?
Yeah, as a producer at NBC.
But Glickman did something else, too. He did something similar to that. Something like that. I like it when there's just sort of less noise, a little bit less noise. I mean, you've got some good guys. I think like Gruden's, he has a nice way. He's very engaging, and Mike Tirico there.
Your boy Ditka.
And Ditka. I love that. I was just talking with Ahmad the other day about watching the, that show in the morning,
NFL
Countdown, and. I'm pleased that those guys are so respectful of Mike. I think there was a time when some of the guys there were kind of like too cool for school, and sort of thought, well, what the old man know, But I like the way that they treat him and respect. They revere him. I mean, he's done some stuff, and once upon a time he would have taken them all apart.
So golf is really your game. Golf is what you live.
Well. Baseball is my favorite game. Golf, I was a caddy, so I ended up playing. It's easier to find 3 other guys to play golf than it is to find 17 other guys to play baseball.
Right. Yeah. So the golf game is right now in transition, and there's proposals around for maybe changing the rules. Would you change any of the rules? What would you do?
I think it's. There's a man named Johan Rupert. Do you know who he is?
No.
He's a South African, and he's a businessman, but he's very involved in golf, very active in golf, South African golf, and he sort of sponsors the Dunhill Links tournament that's over in Scotland that they have at St. Andrews. He's someone you should talk to. He gave a speech at the golf tournament there, speaking about golf that I thought it really should have been distributed universally to all the people that question the value of golf.
And what was his main thesis?
He had a number of important pieces, but it really came back to something that touched me and most of the people, is that the people that you meet through golf are extraordinary people. They're amazing people, and that golf has given all the people in that room more than they ever gave golf. And even great golfers that were in the room, because golf has given the people that I've met through golf, and I don't mean it to sound like a networking thing, like, oh, I profited by meeting this guy or something,
right? But
just the character of the people that I've met through golf has been very influential to me. It's certainly formed who I am, as a caddy, you know, you're basically not a slave, but you're certainly a servant. You're really serving, and you know, show up, keep up, and shut up. You know, those are the rules. And the way that men of character treated me as a caddy has taught me how people are to be treated or need to be treated. And the sort of character issues that come from people who embrace a game that's a game of honor and of self-report, it stands alone in the world of golf. That even though you might want to have better equipment all the time and improve something and learn something, a game of self-report, there's only just the one that I know of, and people that seek that game are of a different fiber, I think.
Well, golf has been a constant through your life since childhood as a caddy, and now you've gone through various stages of a brilliant career and going back a long time and observing you through the years. What stages of kind of visibility, stardom, celebrityhood, whatever you want to call it, how do you go back and assess? I recall I was talking to Ellen, my wife, this morning, and I said, I wanted to bring up the time you came down to the Washington Post, and we went through the newsroom, and Ben Bradley, who just recently passed away, a wonderful human being, and we went by his office, and there was a glass window, and you knocked on the window, and this was 1977, right after all the president's men, and your comment was, hey, thanks for the Nixon thing. And I'll never forget that moment. But that was a stage when it was your first year of Saturday Night Live. And now you've grown through being out of work, Second City, the whole career, Saturday Night Live, the skits, the movies. And at times, I remember you standing on a street corner reading from a Merv Griffin autobiography on the streets of Washington. Take us back a couple of years and talk about these various stages where now you've come to kind of determine what your life is and the way you want to live your life, and it was different way back then.
Well, I didn't really know much, but this desire to have my voice heard, have a voice heard. And I kept finding the voice in places where, most people don't look for it, or where I wouldn't have been before. So being like on a street in Washington or in the post office or at the Super Bowl in 1976, all of a sudden you say, like, I got something to say about this because I've been looking, I've been watching. And so if you really wish to be heard, you've got to be bold on that stage, whatever it is, whether it's, not an ordinary stage or a big stage. So that sort of, fearlessness that you had then, or
you've never lost your fearlessness.
Well, I perspire a little sometimes, but I don't. I'm not.
Well, it's evident from your choices of roles and movies. You're fearless.
Well, I don't know, fearless, but you want to take chances. You want to throw in on stuff that looks like it'd be hard. If it's easy, my dentist criticized me. Said she saw the movie St. Vincent. She said, "Oh, it's too easy." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Well, when it looks easy, as you know, when it looks easy, that's when it's the hardest.
Willie Mays made it look easy. Yeah. But when it looks easy, that's the art, to make it look easy. But I like to throw in on ones that are hard, and throwing in with Ted Melfi on this one. I mean, he was a first-time director who knew what the hell he was going to do. But he seemed game. He seemed like he was worthy of the risk. That he was going to try his hardest, and he was prepared to fall on his face. And that's sort of the thing you learn at Second City. Is like, you cannot be afraid to die. If you're afraid to die, you'll only get to a certain level. You'll never make it you'll never really be free up there.
I have to bring up this incident because I was president and watched it when you made your voice known in the Oak Room at the Plaza Hotel.
I don't remember this.
You don't remember that?
I don't know. Maybe. What happened? Was this on the tour?
Yeah, you were on the tour and you walked in and nobody wanted anybody. They noticed you and they said, "Oh, it's the Hollywood people." And all of a sudden, you jumped up on top of the bar and started singing "God Bless America," for which all the people who had no idea that this tour was coming through were looking up and saying, "What is this?"
Yeah. Well, that's an example of like of finding a stage that wasn't an ordinary one. We should tell what the tour was. It was called the A to Z Bar Tour, and it involved a couple of busloads of people, and these were an unusual group of people that would show up on this, going to a bar whose name begins with each letter of the alphabet. So by the time we got to O of the Oak Bar, you can imagine, let's see this, so that's the 15th letter of the alphabet. So, we're up there at 15 drinks, which started at 7:30
Except for the
or 8 in the
proprietor.
morning.
I was not allowed.
He was not allowed because he had the whistle. We had 15 minutes in each bar to go to get the drink and get out. But what a lot of fun that was. But we had to really take over the Oak Bar because there were a lot of people that thought they had, proprietary right to the bar because they were tourists or something. No.
And there were live chickens on the bus, and
there were always great hats and props, and it was a good trip.
Now, let's get back to the movies here. Who do you listen to, and how do you kind of make decisions about this is a director I'd like to work with, this is a script that really has something for me, this is where I want to take a risk? What process goes on in your mind over that?
Well, I do it pretty much on my own, although people people bring me things or send me things. I don't have an agent any longer.
You haven't had an agent for a long time, right?
No, and that's fine. It you don't get a lot of sort of coincidental kind of material, which doesn't really necessarily, isn't really my meat.
What goes on in your head and you say, how are you thinking about something when you're reading it?
I don't think about it. It's if you're, do you think when you read?
Sometimes.
I think, well, for me, I'm not reading it for pleasure. I'm reading it as a
piece
technician.
Of work, yeah.
I'm reading it as a scientist, sort of. So, which doesn't mean I can't laugh or get emotional about it. And, I like to make little check marks on things going, hey, you got that one right. There's a good one.
Are there any movies that you've seen that you wished you were in?
The only movie I ever wished I was in was The Year of Living Dangerously. You ever see that one?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's Peter Weir, and he's just a spectacular movie director. His stuff is up in the stars. He's really great. And that was a long time ago, before he'd made so many of the movies that he's made. But I'd been to Indonesia, and I really thought I could do something in that part. I really thought, like, oh, that's one. And of course, I didn't get the script. I was sort of a nobody back then, certainly compared to Mel Gibson, but who, Australian like Peter Weir, so he was more likely to be the guy. But
and are there any actors or actresses that
great,
any actors or actresses that that you think, boy, you know what, I'd like to be in a movie with that person?
Well, yeah, there's guys that I think are really great. I didn't really covet. I really wanted to work with John Hurt in a movie. I think John Hurt is, and I really love John Hurt. And I was in a movie with him, but I didn't have any scenes with him, so it wasn't the same. But I did get to have breakfast with him every day, and then we go out for dinner. But John Hurt's a guy that I really like. And I got to work with Robert Duvall, who I didn't really think about working, but he's staggering.
I have two questions here that I'm required to ask from one of my mentors who has since passed away, David Halberstam, who was a good friend over the years. I said, what are the questions that you always ask in an interview? He said, well, when we're getting toward the end of the interview, I usually ask, what question did you expect me to ask that I didn't ask?
Well, I feel like I want to say something about the movies, not that I'm really like a tub thumper, but it's just something I want to say. I really feel like this is a special time of movie making. I think that movies now are maybe getting better than they've been in a while, and like in the way that people look back at the era of Easy Rider and the '70s films as being like a great moment. I think this is a great moment. I think people are going to look at this later and think, just in these last handful of years, people have made, the writing has gotten better. You know, the writing, people are writing great movies. They're writing good stuff. And
what are the movies that you remember over the last few years that you say, I walked out of there and thought, whoa, that was a great experience?
I like this movie, Gattaca. I know that's just the first one that comes into my head. I liked Gattaca. I thought it was pretty good. I think that guy passed away, maybe. Is that possible?
I don't know.
But I thought that was a good movie. I can't it's impossible. You put me on the spot to try to remember something, but
I shouldn't do that.
no, it's all right. It's like saying, what's your favorite movie? Or, you know.
Well, Roy Blunt has cured me of the word favorite. He never wants to be asked a question about what his favorite is.
It's tough. It's like, who is your favorite co-star? That is one. Who's your favorite leading lady? I have the right answer. It's this elephant that I worked with in the movie I did with Roy Blunt.
Roy Blunt, yeah.
Ty. And they go, why was the elephant your favorite? I said, well, she was the most beautiful. She was the most professional, and the only one I cried over when I left.
Okay.
Do you have another one from?
Yeah, there's one other one, and that is, what question should I have asked you that I didn't ask?
Oh, I think you probably would have asked me about Harold Ramis. That's
you know, I thought about that, and I mentioned it to a couple people, but when I heard what you did on Howard Stern, I figured I was going to ask you ahead of time, did you want to talk about Harold? So please, it's a touching relationship, and you had, you know, the usual Irish fallout and back together and everything. So tell us about Harold.
Well, Harold was, you know, I met Harold when I was just a young guy. And he and my brother Brian were in the Second City Theater together.
Right.
And they were the new age guys at the time, like the sort of the older generation of improvisational actors had moved on, and these fellas had taken over. And they were hippies, and they were revolutionaries, and they were, you know, it was a time of the Chicago 7 in Chicago, and they were on trial, and so there was great political turmoil and food in the city. So they were mining that material every day as they were working in Chicago. And you know, I was just a young punk and, you know, a cake eater from the suburbs, and I would go down to watch the show, and they sort of, you know, humored me and let me hang around with them, and I sat over in the corner, occasionally would chirp something, and I got to watch them for free, just watch them work and improvise and do the show many times, and I absorbed an enormous amount watching them. And Harold was particularly kind to me at that time. Harold was, you know, kind of a brainiac, and he had big hair and big Jewish afro, and he was kind of a brainiac, and he'd been a Playboy joke writer one time, so he had like all kinds of cachet. He had all kinds of things going for him. And you know, he and Brian stayed close to the very end, and you know, they did Caddyshack together, you know, and.
So what happened between you and Harold that kind of had to be brought back together again at the end?
Well, when we did Groundhog Day, I felt like Harold was more of had become kind of like, I don't know, like sort of like a mogul, you know. And I remember, you know, to me,
he wasn't a Coca-Cola suit, though.
No, he wasn't a suit. He was in an Arctic, Canada Goose Arctic wear behind the camera, while the rest of us were freezing in front of the camera. But I felt like, in, you know, muckluck boots and everything. I felt like I wasn't, you know, that there was like a camp of people that were this way, you know, and he had a whole bunch of people, you know, he had a company sort of thing, you know. And I just felt like it was, you know, the script was an extraordinary script. You know, Danny Rubin's script was an amazing thing, and it was the conditions were very difficult. We shot it in Woodstock, Illinois, which is colder than Chicago because it's a little bit further north than Chicago and it's out in the wind. And it was the longest winter I ever remember in my life. It lasted forever. It never ended. And it was cold, and we were outside all the time, shooting that thing outside all the time. And so the conditions were very bad. And it was, you know, we were out in the boondocks, and it was cold and hard.
Did you have disagreements over directing or the script or any piece of the movie?
You know, in the editing, I think we had a difference of opinion about we had a difference about the script, too. I mean, that gets a little personal, and that's not for sharing with everyone, but, you know, I just felt like a lot of what was in there was unnecessary, you know. I thought there was a lot of overwriting in it, and I held that, you know, and held Harold responsible for that.
And when you have a disagreement, and, you know, this comes up in all artistic ventures and all creative ventures. There's disagreements between people who are working on it, genuine disagreements where both sides are sometimes right. How, in your world, in your opinion, do those disagreements get resolved?
Well, with people of real, I don't want to say quality, but people that really know, when you see it, you know it. You know it when you throw it, and when you see it, there's no arguing with it. Like people that really know, when you see what it, you know, here's this and here's that. Now, if you really got the goods, you cannot argue for the wrong one.
Is there ever a time when
you can argue for the wrong one before it gets done. You can say this is going to work. It's not going to work. Well, that's an argument. You know, you can disagree. We're going to shoot it now. We're going to perform it, and then you're going to see if someone's going to be right and someone's going to be wrong.
Does it ever come out in a tie? It always resolves itself.
With people of quality, there's no tie. It's always, you always get the right thing.
I see.
I mean, like that movie, we disagreed about a lot of things. That movie is a great, great, great movie.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And now, how did you come back together again with Harold before the end?
Well, you know, it was you know, that happened, that fracture happened, God, I don't know, 20 years into knowing each other, after we'd done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 movies together, as well as like some, you know, TV and theater off Broadway and radio, National Lampoon Radio Hour.
That's true.
So that's there was a lot of, you know, if you were able to pick our work out of our careers and throw it away, our careers would be, you know, hollow. You know, if you excised the work we did together from our careers, our work would be hollow. You know, it wouldn't be much of a career. But so that, you know, and it bothered me. It just bothered me. And I know it bothered Harold too. And I think we both felt the loss and the absence. And I just didn't know what to do. And then he became ill, and I thought, well, this is stupid, you know.
Yeah.
So
you went to visit him, and
yeah.
And that was also.
So and it was great. It was. I mean, it was a beautiful day, obviously.
Can you share any part of the day with us, or?
Well, there was sadness. I mean, I got to. He has a beautiful home. He and Erica have a beautiful home in the suburbs of Chicago, and I went there, and I sort of just showed up. I wasn't expected. I went to the town, and it was like Fargo. It was freezing, and it was freezing in Chicago, and I sort of went, I don't exactly know where it is, and I was wandering around circles in downtown the city, you know, and I just thought, I can't find this damn place. And I just sort of walked into the cop shop and said, excuse me, I'm trying to find, and they said, oh, you're looking for Harold. Yeah. And so, oh, come on, Marty, I'll go get it. You know, and this girl that looks like, Frances McDormand, with the earmuffs, and just steps out and the vest and everything and leads me over to Harold's house. All right, don't tell him I told you, because we're never supposed to bang anybody, but I know you're okay. It's like that. So.
Now, you mentioned all the different things that you've done: radio, off-Broadway, TV, movies. Is there anything that you haven't done that you say, you know what, I'd like to try that?
Broadway.
Broadway.
I mean, we worked off-Broadway. We did the National Lampoon Show off-Broadway. And I mean off. 51st between 5th and 6th was off-Broadway. But I'd like to do that. And I was almost going to do it a couple years ago. I'm close. But yeah, everything has to, all the ducks got to be in a row. You got to have the decks cleared. And it would be great, because I love the theater life. You sleep, you wake up at noon. You rumble into work around 7.
How do these people do it? They go years and they do the same play, and you think, well, they're moving this part around, or, we went to see Mamma Mia a few times, and there's a woman in it from my hometown, from Scranton, and she would say, would change the songs every once in a while just to throw in a lyric here or there.
Oh, yeah. Well, you have to keep it alive for yourselves as the actors. When we were in Second City, you do a show, you'd improvise, you do a whole improvisational set late, but you do the show, and we'd switch parts. Pardon me, I got a cough. We'd switch parts all the time, and you're always just trying to keep it alive, so you'd change the words. You'd completely upside down a word, or start speaking in an accent, or do just anything just to keep it alive.
How much did that happen on Saturday Night Live?
Well, it wasn't like you never got bored with the material on Saturday Night. It wasn't like you had to do the same material many times.
Saturday.
Just, you only got to get it right once. But yeah, there was some, because that was where we all came from. We all came from that kind of theater. So when things got goofy, you could just go. But it was really a challenge to make that material work. Just for the writers, you go like, okay, we got to figure out how to make this stuff work. And sometimes that freedom, that improvising, would solve the mystery of the sketch that hadn't completely been finished, and sometimes it was just to keep it loose and fun. But it was fun enough just to do it live. It really was.
So we haven't talked just a brief part on Saturday Night Live, and you've been through this, and you have a relationship with Lauren that now
I've been
lasts.
through hell. No, yeah.
Purgatory too.
No.
Just hell.
No, that was great. I didn't have any hell at Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. So how does that show go from different cast to different cast to different cast and still keep the vibrance that it does? Well, I know you don't watch as much as you used to, or
no, but I record it. Yeah. I get to it. I just don't. I'm not necessarily. Once you've had a job that from 11:30 to 1 on Saturday Night Live, you don't on Saturday night. You really don't want to do that anymore. Now that you can record something, why would I? There's other things to do at night on Saturday night.
Sleep.
Sleep is one. Sure. But how did they do it? Well, Lauren has gotten good at the job.
Great.
He really has gotten good at the job. He sort of was. He really has gotten good at it. And it's. I mean, in those days, it was hard. It was maybe a little more difficult to find the writers and the performers. Now there's like so many people that aspire to do that.
But is there anyone in the business? Is there anyone in the business, and I'm an outsider looking at the Saturday Night Live, is there anyone in the business who has had more of an aptitude of recognizing talent and getting so many different talent over such a long period of time?
Brian Cashman? No, I don't know.
Theo Epstein for you.
Theo Epstein, I was going to say, but I didn't want to be such a homie. I don't know. I can't think of anyone. I mean, maybe whomever is hiring the writers on The Simpsons.
Yeah.
But it's the same field. It's the same talent pool. A lot of those guys have hiccuped out of Saturday Night Live too.
I can't leave here with our both being baseball fans. I counted up that you have had some degree of ownership of 15 minor league baseball teams. And 14 of them have been independent. And now, as I read, is it true that the Charleston River Dogs are now associated with the Yankees?
Yes, the evil empire. Yeah.
And how are you dealing with that?
I've always liked some Yankees. There's always been some Yankees that are cool. Like when we worked on Saturday Night Live, some of those guys would come around, and they were cool.
Mickey Rivers, nobody better.
There are some really good guys that have been Yankees, and there still are, you know. So
you're comfortable in Charleston being associated with the Yankees.
The Yankees really do run a first-class operation. They do everything first class. There's a reason that they've had the success. They do not skimp on money. They expect results, and they provide everything that a player can need to have success. They do not leave them wanting for anything.
And so what's happened the last couple of years?
Well, we've had some players. We've had some serious talent come through. It's an A-level team, so you're getting these kids that are, some of them can be 17, 18, 19. They don't really know how to win baseball games. They're just talent. They're just really sort of freakishly talented. And they come and they don't necessarily know how to, I'm not sure they all know the rules of the game, honestly. They're just talent. They're really just talent. But the game is still the same. And
they had the super talent, Mr. Jeter, so.
Well, he's an unusual person. He's just a really unusual person, and the game is really lucky to have had him, and New York especially.
I have a mother-in-law who has 92 years old and has a Derek Jeter cane. And she says a rosary once a week that Derek Jeter doesn't get in any kind of off-the-field problems while she's still alive.
Well, I think he's got her to thank, because she's done a fantastic job.
She sure has. Anyway, thank you, Bill Murray. St. Vincent's the movie. I guarantee you, if you see it, you will enjoy it. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for listening to Grantland. To hear more Grantland shows in your earballs, subscribe to Grantland Sports and Grantland Pop Culture on iTunes. Or go to grantland.com and click on podcasts.